The story begins in a house where the silhouettes of a man and woman arguing are visible, their voices carrying through the air. A teenage girl hears a sharp bird call, its piercing sound causing her body to convulse as her surroundings distort and echo. Overwhelmed, she flees into the forest. Meanwhile, a man is on the phone, updating another man about the girl's disappearance. The recipient coldly remarks that their future subjects will be easier to manage. Teenager Gretchen is relocating to the Bavarian Alps to live with her father, Luis, and his new wife, Beth, following the death of her mother. Gretchen's mute half-sister, Alma, also lives with them, but Gretchen refuses to acknowledge her as anything more than her father's daughter. Shortly after their arrival, the family meets Dr. Koenig, the proprietor of a nearby hotel where Gretchen is offered a job. Koenig's head of staff, Dr. Bonomo, is also introduced to her. Gretchen is instructed to spend time with Alma. While playing music, Gretchen energetically strums an air guitar, and Alma mimics her movements. Suddenly, the eerie bird call echoes again, shrill and jarring. Alma collapses into a seizure, while Gretchen finds herself trapped in a surreal loop, reliving the same moments until Alma claws at her face, breaking the cycle. The noise ceases as Luis and Beth rush in to care for Alma. At the hotel, Gretchen begins her new job alongside a woman named Beatrix, nicknamed Trixie, whose boyfriend Eric, a local cop, also lends a hand. During her shift, Gretchen observes a sickly woman vomiting in the lobby before her husband intervenes to help. Later, a woman named Ed arrives, requesting a room and purchasing a six-pack of beer. Gretchen and Ed later witness the same sickly woman drinking something quietly after vomiting again, before she disappears from sight. That evening, despite Koenig's warnings about the dangers of returning home alone at night, Gretchen decides to ride her bike through the woods. Along the way, a hooded woman begins to chase her. Panicked, Gretchen rushes into a nearby station to seek help, but accidentally injures herself by slamming into a glass pane, leaving her forehead badly cut. The hooded woman vanishes, and when Gretchen files a report with Eric, he dismisses the incident as a harmless prank. The following day, Gretchen is approached at the resort by a man named Henry, who introduces himself as a detective. He reveals that he is investigating a murder tied to the mysterious woman Gretchen encountered the previous night. Gretchen encounters Ed once more, and the two share a cigarette before slipping outside to make out. Caught up in the moment, they decide to escape together to Paris. However, as they drive, the piercing bird call rings out again, trapping Gretchen in another time loop. The hooded woman suddenly appears in the road, forcing Ed to swerve and crash the car. The woman drags Ed out of the wreck and violently tosses her aside before turning her attention to Gretchen. Gretchen regains consciousness at the resort, receiving medical care. After brief visits from her father and Beth, Henry arrives to see her. He reveals his suspicions that the hooded woman is connected to his wife's death, as well as another local woman, specifically the vomiting woman Gretchen saw earlier. Both victims were found by their husbands, having choked to death on their own vomit. Once cleared to leave her room, Gretchen joins Henry in staking out the Lover's Lounge, the same suite where the vomiting woman and her husband had stayed. Meanwhile, Trixie and Eric prepare for a private romantic evening in the suite. While Eric steps away briefly to grab something, the bird call echoes once more, pulling Eric into a time loop. The hooded woman enters, terrifying Trixie, who collapses unconscious. The woman attempts to implant some kind of goo into her body. Gretchen and Henry burst into the suite just after the woman flees, turning Trixie onto her side to prevent her from choking. The next morning, Gretchen confronts her father about the strange occurrences at the resort and Koenig's potential involvement in sinister activities. Koenig interrupts, presenting a box filled with Gretchen's late mother's belongings, which have been sent to the house. This revelation forces Luis to admit that he sold their old home, infuriating Gretchen. Koenig, standing near the window, begins to play a flute, summoning the eerie bird call once more. Heartbroken, Gretchen retreats to listen to her mother's old answering machine messages, which she had saved to hear her voice. To her shock, one of the recordings now contains a text-to-speech message that sounds like Alma, inviting Gretchen's mother to visit in order to make Gretchen happy. When Gretchen leaves her room, she finds her family gone. Koenig explains that Alma suffered a seizure and has been taken to the hospital. Offering to drive Gretchen to the nearest train station, Koenig instead takes her to his house. There, Gretchen discovers Eric holding Henry captive. Koenig reveals that Henry lost his position as a detective after pursuing a case that implicated Koenig himself. Before Gretchen can act, Koenig sprays her face with pheromones and locks her inside a pool house. Gretchen tries to escape, but the piercing bird call traps her in another time loop. She is quickly subdued by the teenage girl from earlier. Koenig emerges and reveals the truth about his experiment. The hooded woman is part of an ancient, inhuman species that implants its offspring in human hosts, leaving them to be raised by unsuspecting families before they return to their kind, similar to the behavior of cuckoo birds. Alma, Koenig explains, is one such child, born of the hooded woman, with Beth used only as a surrogate. The teenage girl, another member of the species, attempts to implant her offspring into Gretchen, but Henry intervenes, shooting both Koenig and the young girl before freeing Gretchen. Gretchen and Henry rush to the hospital, where Dr. Bonomo is orchestrating an experiment to reunite Alma with the hooded woman. Beth, feeling unwell, is taken away with Luis. Koenig, having survived his gunshot wound, arrives and kills Bonomo and her assistant. Taking control of the experiment, he prepares to finish what he started. Meanwhile, Henry restrains Gretchen, insisting that Alma is a monster who must be stopped. Determined to save her sister, Gretchen stabs Henry with her butterfly knife and breaks free. Gretchen releases Alma from captivity, but Alma pushes her away and flees. The hooded woman arrives, pursuing Gretchen as she tries to catch up to Alma. In a tense chase through the hospital's records room, the creature stalks Gretchen. Henry reappears, knocking over a set of shelves to slow the hooded woman. The creature targets Gretchen but is fatally stabbed in the throat and collapses, bleeding out. Alma continues to run and nearly gets caught in the crossfire as Henry and Koenig engage in a shootout. Gretchen finally reaches Alma, reminding her of the message she heard, and shares that their mother said, "Thank you." The words resonate with Alma, and the two sisters finally connect. As Gretchen leads Alma towards safety, Koenig takes aim at them. While he reloads, Gretchen seizes the opportunity to flee. However, Henry is still intent on killing Alma. Alma emits a powerful, disorienting shriek, much like the hooded woman's cry, incapacitating both men long enough for her and Gretchen to escape. Moments later, Koenig and Henry shoot each other at the same time, killing one another. Outside the facility, Gretchen and Alma find Ed waiting for them, having left the hospital. Ed drives the two far away from the resort, leaving the horrors behind them. What do you think about the concept of a centuries-old inhuman species using humans as surrogates? Does it add an intriguing twist, or is it too far-fetched for your taste? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content like this. See you next time.